All right, so here is the code as of the end on Monday. I just re-downloaded it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up, make sure everything still looks right on local. So I'm just going to cd into it. Open up the code. I'm going to do what I normally do, just reset everything, right? So I'm going to clear the node modules and reinstall. Just because it's sort of a habit of mine. So I'm just going to reinstall the node modules, run it again on local, and make sure everything is still kind of where it was when we left off. And then just pick up where we left off. So make sure you guys are doing the same. Or if you already have it running on your computer, that's fine too. Okay, so the node module is reinstalled. I'm going to run the dev server, and that's going to be npm run dev. All right, so npm run dev. Okay, head over to localhost 3000. Okay, so this is where we left off at the end of last time. Now we were working on an API route to handle jobs requests for getting jobs, creating a job, updating a job, etc. And that route, if you look at the app.js here, is we called it jobs, and the file is in the routes directory where it should be. So that's where we left off. So if we open that up, oh, actually, before I get to that, and also don't forget, we connected it to this path right here. So right here, we connected it to the jobs path. So every time you go to localhost 3000/jobs, what that means is we are using this route file, the one we were working on Monday. And on Monday, we completed two route handling, or two paths. We completed the main path and the ID path. So if I go to localhost 3000/jobs, this is going to return all the jobs currently in our database. Okay. Also, some people have the question of how do I make my JSON look this way? I forgot to point out I'm using a Chrome plugin. So if you go to Google and just Google the following JSON formatter plugin, it's the first one. So just download and install that, and this will make your JSON look like mine. So that's basically it. Okay. So we have two jobs here on the back end in our database that's being returned by our jobs endpoint, our jobs API endpoint. We have another endpoint over here which takes an ID parameter, and this is kind of where we left off last time. So don't forget that this colon right here indicates that the request has an ID parameter, which we are then accessing on line 26. So on line 26, we're grabbing the ID, and then we're using that ID to request a specific job on line 29 using the controller. So don't forget the controller is in this project, the controller is what makes all the database interactions. So right now we're just doing reads or gets, but everything else would happen to the controller as well. Okay. So if I grab an ID from this list, so let's do the second one right here, and I just paste it in, then it's giving me the ID, the entire payload of the job whose ID matches the string in the URL. Okay? And that's something we wrote, like that's part of what we wrote as our API endpoint, right? So it doesn't like automatically happen as a web developer. That's part of your job is to make that happen. Does that make sense? So we have the GET requests successfully connected, right? And in the CRUD acronym, right? In the CRUD processes, which one do we just connect? Yeah, the read. So the read is connected. That means we have the C and the U and the D, right? So the C stands for what? Create. And as far as HTTP methods goes, that correlates to what? So remember, we have 4 HTTP types. What are they? Mm-hmm. And what?
Create. Post.
Post. Right. So we now want to work on create. Right. We want to create a job. So in other words, let's say we're on our resume and our resume site, and you just got a new job, right? So you want to add that to here. We need to create a job for that, right? So which HTTP method are we going to be dealing with now? Post, exactly. So we go back to our jobs route, right? So far we have 2 handlers, right? Now we want to create another handler for the create. So it will be router dot what? Post, exactly. Very good. Because the HTTP method post is supposed to correspond with create. Okay. And for now, just take this on faith that we just want the base path. And then like every other route handler, it takes the same inputs, request, response. So we just do the same thing we always do. Request, response. So the important thing here, though, is this word right here, post. And it's important to understand like kind of how we know when to use what. Like these things are not automatic. It's very easy to mess this up, right? Because you can just type in the wrong word, like get, right? And without any understanding of what's supposed to go where, it's just very easy to do the wrong thing. It's very easy to sort of mess up. Okay, so this word here, post, corresponds with the HTTP method post, right? And the word post should automatically tell you that we're going to do what? Create, right? Since we're using the jobs route, what do you think we're creating right now? We're using the jobs route here. So what are we creating? A job, right. So this is for create a new job in the database. Right, or more technically, it would be like enter a new job in the database. Okay, first things first, I'm going to just have it respond. With some test data, just some dummy text, just so we can see whether or not we can connect it, okay? So let's say data or confirmation. Create a new job. Okay, now here's the tricky part. Browsers make what kind of request? Get. Almost all requests are get. So how can we test this endpoint? It's not a get. So how can we test it? Now I'll give you a clue. We did it at the tail end of the previous workshop, the blog one. If you recall, at the very end, we had like a contact form. Browsers make GET requests. We all understand that, right? So within a browser, how can you make a POST request? How did we do it last time?
Use a post controller?
Mm-mm.
remember when we hit that send key,
Yeah.
where in the code was that?
Well, don't worry about that. That's a step ahead.
Okay.
When you hit that send key in a contact form, what kind of request were you making?
You're making a post.
Post. So in other words, if we want to hit that endpoint, that post endpoint, what can we set up? A form. Right. So we can set up a form on a page, because browsers may get requests almost all the time. One of the only exceptions is a form. When you have a form and you press send, just like you said, it sends a post request, just like you said. Well, what did we just set up here in line 43?
We created a new job.
No, we didn't. We set up a post handler.
I mean, yes.
Okay? So all we need to do, or one of the things we can do to test this, is set up a form and point it to that endpoint. That would be the right way to do it, or one of the right ways. There's other ways, but that's probably the best way. Okay? So if I go back to my resume, we have a couple choices here. Like, we can put a form here, like fill out a form, right? Like input, text field, whatever. But that would be kind of awkward to put right here, because then like people would see it, right? I mean, like somebody else who doesn't know you at all could theoretically like put in a job for you. That makes no sense. So something else we can do is set up just like a sort of a dummy page for our own purposes, and then put in a form there that only we know about, right? And then we can create another job. Does that make sense? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create a.
We're setting up a form to test to make sure that what we're entering here under jobs is actually going to show up here.
You got it. That's going to be sort of the objective of tonight's workshop. So you try to keep that part straight, because that is the overarching goal, right? So what tends to happen, because we're about to write a lot of code, what tends to happen is as we get into the code, people forget why we're doing this, right? And you lose track of stuff, and you end up doing stuff that you don't need to do. But that's why you want to remember, like what you did there was a good thing. Like what are we even trying to do? As long as you properly establish that, then just everything you do should be with that in mind.
Why can't we just do like what we would normally do? Just put something there and then
put something where?
Okay, so add a new job.
Yeah.
Add a new job and then just see if it's.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out how to do. How do we add a new job? I mean, I'll do that if you can tell me how. See, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right? Right now, there is no way to add a new job because we didn't fill this out. That's how you add a new job.
Okay.
But we didn't fill that out yet. So that functionality that you're referring to doesn't exist yet.
Okay.
Our job is to build that in.
Okay.
So you're kind of thinking ahead, right?
Okay.
So now it's kind of like, let's kind of circular logic sometimes. Like I don't know a good example,
okay.
but
you've
essentially pinpointed the problem, right?
We have tested now. It makes sense to test to make sure that functionality actually works somewhere, and then you do it actually on the project.
Almost. You're still a step ahead. The functionality doesn't work at all because we didn't plug it in.
Right. So we have to create it.
Yes. Now you're correct.
So we have to create the functionality, but we're not going to create it in using the project as the actual test ground in case something.
Well, I don't understand that part.
Is there a way for us to create that functionality just right here? Do we have to set up a form to create that functionality?
Oh, there are other ways, yeah, but.
Do you understand?
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, but.
Is that like a safety measure?
No. Well, so it also comes down to like kind of what's the point of like why are we here? Like, can I show you like a quick 6-second way just to get a new job in there? Yeah, but that's not why you're here. The whole point is to instruct you kind of from the bottom up, like how to put all the pieces together, right? So like, yeah, there are shortcuts that'll take 6 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever, but who's benefiting from that? right? So what we need to do, so let's take a step back to what Yusuf was saying. What do we need to do here is we need to create a whole new page, right? Whose sole purpose is to have a form that we fill out every time we want to add a new job, okay? So before we do any of that, the first thing we need to do is decide where is that page going to be. So look at my URL bar. You see these question marks?
Mhm.
We got to decide where we're going to point to see that page. So just draw some ideas.
Could we create?
Again, don't overthink it. Look at the question marks on the URL. Those shouldn't be question marks. Those should be something else entirely.
Have to create a route. Something.
Just look at the question marks, right? Instead of question mark, it should say something else. Something else.
The experience test.
Well, make it obvious.
Or a new page.
Come on, don't overthink this. Keep it simple.
Job,
Well, that's a little bit too.
job test.
Yeah, job
Job
test,
form,
job
test.
form. Good, yeah. Job form, job test. Give me a couple more.
Contact.
Well, it's not a contact form. So that's a wrong answer, right? We got to make it obvious. What's that?
Form. Just regular
That's a little too general. I think job test is good. What was the other one? Job
test
form.
Job form.
Yeah, give me a couple more.
Post form.
That has nothing to do with job, right? So
Job
there are
sample.
job sample.
Job
Yeah.
sample.
Okay.
Job input sample.
Yeah, all right. Let's go with job form. So the point is, here's my point. Like, it is your job to figure this out. Okay, there's no like instruction manual. There's no like do this and do that. And like no. Like it's on you, right? So you have to make wise decisions here. That's why I keep saying throw out some more ideas. And I think of the ones we've heard, job form seems to be the most intuitive, right? Now when I press enter, obviously nothing's going to happen, or we're going to get an error because why? We didn't do anything. So let's get cracking on that. So I'm going to turn off my server. So we've settled on job form. Okay, so who can tell me what to do next?
Should we start with creating a route?
Okay, so it's a good idea. But we're going to need a route, right? So take me through it.
So would the route be job form?
Okay, so tell me what to do.
First go into the route folder.
Okay. Actually, I'm going to do it all in VS Code, trying to get in that habit. Okay.
And you're going to right click and create the file job.
Okay. By the way, you can just do that here too.
Or use that.
Yep. And then what are we calling it?
We're going to name it job form.js.
Good. Great. Now we have that.
We're going to then, if I'm not mistaken, at the top of the code, we're going to pull in the constant vertex.
Yeah, we can just copy and paste that part. Well, pick it from jobs.js.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Okay.
And just copy the first 4 lines.
Yeah.
And then this part I'm just walking you through because it's copying and pasting. And then don't forget the bottom to export the router. Okay. And like I said, because that's just copy and pasting, I'll walk you through that. But that's it. And I'll just tell you right now, you don't need line 2.
Okay.
Yeah, that import is unnecessary. Okay, but now from here, back to you. You tell me what to do next.
Now we're going to create in here we're going to create a router.post.
Why is that?
Because we're posting from this particular file. Well, in this particular code, we are creating the post that's going to test.
But I thought we did that over here, down here. So that's two different areas with the same code. Can't be right.
Yeah.
So what was the objective of this job form? Don't lose sight of the primary objective.
The objective was to test.
To be able to post.
Now you're going too far ahead. What was the objective of just this one file? Remember what we did?
To create.
We had this over here. I pressed
Oh,
enter.
to create a form.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't lose sight of that. It's very, very important. You gotta keep a lot of spinning plates right in your head, right?
Yes.
And that's the challenge. Okay, so you should constantly remind yourself why are we so this is a no-go. So what should we put there instead? So bear in mind, right now nothing shows up. It's broken, right? That's a problem. So first order of business is we gotta get that to work. Get? Why is it a get? Yeah. Yeah, the browsers make GET requests. Yeah, exactly. So this is a GET request. Okay, and I'm just gonna sort of give you that one for free. It's gonna be just a slash and then yeah, the usual request res and all that stuff. Okay, so we have this set up. Doesn't do anything, right? So what do we do next?
We then set up the controller.
What for? I mean, you're guessing? Don't guess. If you have a reason, then throw it out there.
We're
But
setting up the controller because we are going to
yeah, if you don't have a reason, then I'm not trying to be like brusque or anything, but like this is the job.
yeah.
This is the job. So everything you do, you have to back it up. Like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you do that? So again, just to remind you, this is broken, obviously. Nothing is showing up here except an error message. We don't want that. What do we want to eventually show up here? A form, a job form. So what are the mechanics to make that happen? Think about the underlying mechanics that will make that happen. Look, what do we need to have anything render at all?
Pointing in the right direction.
Well, we already did that. We have the job form decided over there. So instead of a form, let's take a step back. Let's take one step back from that. So forget the form for now, right? Let's just get anything showing up here. Literally anything that's not broken. Let's start with that. So put the form away, forget controllers, forget jobs, forget all that. Just let's get something at all showing up here. And by the way, this is what I do in my actual work. Like, just take it from step one. Like, just get something showing up, and then build off that.
Oh,
What do you got, Yusuf?
would you provide a response?
Where?
Right in that.
You can give me a line number.
RES. Let's say we want to render the home.mustache.
Okay,
So,
that counts as anything, right? So what do I type next?
Render. Then in parentheses. Then home.
Okay.
Then comma. No, just home.
Just home. Okay. Well, give me some rationale there. You guys had a just slight disagreement. I want to hear the thought process there.
Well, I was looking at the index.js and you said just to show anything. So,
Anything, right?
I said, okay, well, let's render the home page,
Right.
which is already established in the views. The views folder is under the partials.
Yep.
So that way, at least, and that's where the
This is becoming a freaking library. I might have to email the manager because college kids are just using it as their own library. It's not. As long as they don't get in our way, I guess it's all right. But I'm becoming that old man. Get off my lawn. All right. Let's. Yeah, Yusuf, you're right. We just want to show anything, right? And so we have a home template. Forget about the data. It's not going to look exactly right. But the point is we got to get something showing up. Right? So this is good enough for now. That's a good idea. So let's go ahead and run it. Whoops, what did I do? I think it's npm run dev, right? So I'm mixing up my scripts. Yep. All right. npm run dev. Okay, still nothing, right? So unsuccessful. So I'll tell you right now, this isn't wrong. We're just not done. So who can remember the next step? So when I hit this endpoint, like literally nothing shows up, right? We don't see the home page or really anything. Like it's a completely invalid response. So who can pinpoint what we forgot to do? Well, what do we do here? We created a route, right? Obviously we created a route. Did we use that route?
Oh.
don't we have to in the apps.js,
Okay,
we have to import that route.
right. So tell me what to do.
What you're going to do is const, and we named it job form equals require in parentheses dot slash route slash job form.
So right here on line 24, we're importing the route we just created. That's good, right? Because why else would we create it? But have we used it?
No, do we have to now set the route?
Yeah, literally, we have to use it.
Oh, after use.
Yeah, so what do we do?
After use in parentheses slash job form.
And then the job form. So if I hit this endpoint now, what are we hoping to see? Home page. There it is. So now we have something literally showing up here. Now we're in business, right? So remember kind of what I was saying, like you want to have the overriding goal in mind. It might even help just to write it down. Like what's the overriding goal? And then from there you take a step back, right? So at one point we said we got to get a form to show up. Too soon. We got to get anything to show up, right? So now we've got that accomplished. Like we got something. We not only do we have anything, we have what we intended to see. Right. This was our intention. So now we're in business. So now let's discuss the next objective. What should be the next objective? Or to phrase it better, what should be the next step towards our objective? Okay? So we don't want to see all this. We don't really want to see all this stuff, right? We just need to get something on the page. So now we want to remove that and create a form. So let's discuss that process.
We go back to job form,
Okay?
and then enter what you would want to see.
Tell me how to do that. That's the non-technical version of just make it work, right? And that's what my PMs tell me. And then I just hand them my computer and say, you make it work. I'm going to go take a coffee break, right? No, our job is to make it work. So what's the next step in making it work? I'm not picking on you, Kia, but like, we gotta really break it down. Okay.
Would we create a mustache file for form?
Right, we don't want to use the homepage for this. That was just for pure testing, right? It served its purpose. We now want to get rid of it and replace it with what, Yusuf?
Form.
Right, a dedicated mustache file for this purpose. Let's do that. So I'm going to turn off my server, and then let's get that process underway. So it's your idea. You tell me what to do.
You would go to the view folders.
Actually, I'm going to keep doing VS Code. Okay.
And then you're going to hit that the new file. And what the name is job form.
Why'd you pick that name?
Just to keep it consistent.
Very good. Right. Make it readable, easy to navigate. Of course, this is now empty because we just created it, so we got some work to do. Now let me ask you this. Do we care about the actual visual appearance of this page?
No.
Why not?
Because it's just a job folder test on post.
Well, even when we're done testing, let's say like the test is successful, we want to leave it there, right? Who is it for? It's just for us, right? So we don't need to worry about importing all the styles and all the nice HTML. All we need is a form, right? So we can just start punching that in right away. Like, who cares if it looks nice? It's just for us anyway. Am I making sense? So let's start hammering out some really, really basic HTML. So what I have here is basically the most primitive HTML you can possibly have. It's just an empty white page, okay? And inside here, inside this body tag is where we're going to insert the form. Okay, so before I do that, just make sure you guys are all caught up. Okay, everyone caught up? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a header tag. And I'm going to say add new job. Okay, and let's not worry about the form right now. Let's worry about just getting this to show up. Okay, so really, really baby steps, you know, like one step at a time, one step at a time. So let's put the form aside, like I just said, and let's try to get this guy to show up instead of the home page. Because right now when I go to that path, when I hit the endpoint, I see the home page. We now no longer want that. That served its purpose. Now we need something else. So how do we swap it out?
If you go back to the job form.js, I'm going to swap the render home to job form.
And then gotta run the server, so npm run dev. And so when I hit the endpoint, I should see what?
I forgot what you had in the body.
Oh, you should have it too, right?
Yeah, I didn't type it.
Okay. But should we see a form?
No,
No. Why not?
because we haven't.
You didn't put that in the
We didn't type it in yet, right? Good. So we only see this. Okay. And that's all we want to see. So this is where a lot of people kind of lose track and they're like, oh, wait, I messed up. There's no form. Do you see how you can kind of trip yourself up by thinking too far ahead? Right? This is the sort of thing that people sort of fall into by mistake. Okay? This is success because we didn't create the form yet. Okay? So before I keep moving forward, is everyone caught up to this?
Can you go back to the job forms and stuff?
Yeah. Make sure you have that part showing up because it's a pretty key part of this. So I'm just gonna. Okay, so we have this now showing up, right? Okay, so took a detour, but we got it working. Now, remember, this is just one step towards the eventual objective, right? The eventual objective is to create a job. That's a couple steps ahead. What is the next immediate thing we need to be doing?
Just to now create the form.
Right, exactly. This isn't very helpful, right? Now we gotta create the form. So we go back here, and I'm already in the template file, but if you're not, open this up. And let's go ahead and add the form. So I'll just take you through this because you haven't done this many times. I don't think we've done this at all, so I'll just take you through it. So here I created a form tag. A form is like an input field. Like whenever you do, like you sign up to a new website, like you're filling out a form. So we need a series of inputs to populate the form. Those inputs should correspond with the schema of the job we discussed on Monday, right? So for example, if you look at the actual home page, remember on Monday we set up the schema, right? And we have a couple things. We have the position, the location, the company, the location, start date, end date description, right? So how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields. 6 fields, right? So we need to have an input field for each one of those. You with me? So let's just fill them out. Let's just do 1. These are all going to be text fields. We'll call it position. Yeah, position. Okay, we're just going to do that one for now. So that's an input field. It's a text field, and that's when you do like username, password, like you're filling out an input field, and the type is text. The placeholder is the text that shows up if it's empty, right? So you can just quickly confirm like what that looks like by reloading the page. So I'm going to reload this real quick just so you can see what's supposed to show up. So you guys see that, right? And if it's empty, it says position. Okay, and that's all you've done. So once you have that set up, we can just copy and paste that basically 6 times. Okay, so make sure you have that first. Good, all right. And then just copy and paste 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then what were the other ones? So it was position, company, location, start, end, and description. Technically, that last one should be a text area. I don't know, maybe we'll make it that, who cares? But this is really more just a test to see how the controller works. But I think everyone in this room can kind of figure out what's supposed to show up, right? Just 6 input fields with the placeholders. And that's it, right? Okay, just copying and pasting, nothing crazy. So this part should be just an extension of the first part. Now here's the part where you need to like sort of figure stuff out. So in the actual models where we define the job schema on Monday, if you recall, if we open that up, we defined these characteristics, these attributes of the schema. Those first 6 are the ones we're going to fill out in the form. Okay? So what matters are the names of the attributes, literally position, location, company, start, and in description. Those values have to be filled out in the form. You with me? So the way you do that is you go back to the form, and in each one of these inputs, you have to essentially assign the attribute. Okay? And that attribute is called name. So it's name equals position. Now here's where the actual coding comes in. You have to make sure the casing is matched perfectly. There's no typos. Like that has to match up perfectly with the schema definition position. You see that? Because we're gonna map those fields one to one. So now here's where you have to be careful. So like before, I was going a little bit fast with the copying and pasting. Here's not the time for that. Here you want to make sure you got the exact word and the casing and everything. Like for example, you see that little space right there? Breaks everything. Okay, so don't let things like that happen, right? And someone might do this by mistake. Perfectly reasonable mistake. You just broke everything. Okay, so don't be careless with that. Make sure it's lowercase p. Okay, I'm going to kind of whip through it just because I've done this a million times, but just so I can give myself more time to speak. So I'm just going to copy and paste these, but don't do it this way. Do as I say, not as I do. So we got company. Start and description. Okay. So the important thing to remember here is that these input fields have a name attribute, and it's a little bit misleading. It's really like that's the value of the data. That's the data attribute. So when that goes to the server, the backend, those are the fields that we are going to use to create the new job. You guys with me? So take your time, be conscientious, get the casing right, don't be fast, don't be hasty. I just do it fast so I can give myself more time to talk. I don't have to like type and speak at the same time. How does it taste today, Yusuf? Is it good?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't had any since last Monday. I think I'll have a couple tonight, but not too many. That's the real reason these college kids are always in the office. Right? Can't beat that. Did you hear back from the company?
Yeah, they actually called me today.
Good. They probably want a follow-up interview, or
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably going to be 2 more rounds of interviews. And then,
Yeah, they're asking why I'd be a good fit into what
sounds like a
doing.
first interview question, but
Yeah, it's interesting because I wasn't expecting that. But
tell you what you want to do is tell them the things you want to learn on the job.
Yeah.
So you want to say all the stuff we talked about yesterday or the day, whenever that was, 2 days ago, whenever it was. Like bring that up. Be like, I want to get into Docker containerizations and cluster management with Kubernetes, and be like, look, I don't know all that stuff now. They don't expect you to. That would be a lot for an entry level or a junior dev. But be like, these are the things I plan on learning.
Exactly.
And kind of be like, don't say it this way, but be like, look, this is going to happen one way or the other. You may as well benefit from this.
Well, and that's the way I'm
Right.
gonna approach it. Yeah.
Right. It's like he's like, look, I'm learning this stuff either way, no matter what. So you may, as a company, you may as well.
Yeah.
Like this train is not stopping. Like I'm gonna learn all this stuff. You want to convey that mentality.
Yeah.
And as long as you do that confidently and like sort of very, like just shy forcefully, like just very, very short of like, this is gonna happen no matter what.
Yeah.
So I'd love to do it at your company, but if not, no sweat. Like I'm still gonna learn it, and that's the mentality you want.
Yeah.
That will get you through a lot more doors than not. Yeah, interviewing is one thing I have down pretty pat. Got that down to a science. Okay, let's discuss how to now send this data to our jobs post handler. Right, I'll just walk you through this because you haven't seen it before. Well, you have, but it was very quick, and I don't think you remember. So we have a jobs endpoint right here in the jobs route, which is a post handler, which creates a new job, right? So what we need to do is our form needs to send a post request to that handler. Okay, that's very important you understand what's going on here. So our form that we just wrote has to send a post request to that handler, which we also wrote about an hour ago. Okay? That handler lives in the jobs route file. Okay? And the jobs route file is connected right here in the jobs path, line 28. So what that means is we have to send a post request to /jobs. And not job form, because that's not where the handler is. The handler is in /jobs. And Yusuf, this is why earlier I said we have a conflict, because you almost had to form the post handler in this route. Remember that?
Yeah.
So then I said there's going to be 2 post handlers. That's not good. That's 2 people doing the same job.
Yeah.
So it's really, we already have it set up over here. So the form has to send a post request to this endpoint. And that's done through something called an action. So we create an action, and we do /jobs. And what I just explained is the reason why that's /jobs instead of like jobs form or something like that. Okay, there's a lot of like pieces connecting here that you need to keep straight.
So it's jobs and not jobs form because it's sending it to jobs.
Sending it to the jobs route. Yeah, that's correct. And then earlier on this evening, about an hour ago, we created a post handler in the jobs route.
Right.
Now we could have just don't copy this, just watch me. We could have just as easily done this. I could have just taken this and like just maybe instead of here, I put it in here in the job form. I create a post handler right there, right? And then this form would now have to go to job form because the job form route is connected in that path. That's where it's connected. You could have done that too. It would have made sense as well. Like both ways would have been pretty reasonable. But the important thing is understanding like how to know where to send the data. Okay? So I'm going to put it back to the way it was. It should be job. This should be back here. And that should be gone. Okay? Now the form now is knows where to send the data. And that's right here. That's the action. But it doesn't know how to send the data. And that's called the method. And this is the post. So like I said, it's sending a post request to that endpoint.
Create requests to that endpoint.
And the endpoint right now doesn't do anything except spit back that response. Okay? Now there's one more thing to do. If I reload the page, I can't actually send anything yet until I add one more field, a submit button. So that's another input. That's called type. This is a type submit. And this should give it a value create job.
Okay, can you just repeat the last?
Sure. So let's sort of take it through what the form is doing. The form is collecting the information of a new job you want to create. That information is outlined in these attributes: position, company, location, etc. Once it has the data, it has to send it somewhere, right? Where are you going to send the data? That is determined in the action attribute, to job. Now, why is it going to that route, that path? Because in the job path right here on line 28, should be jobs. It's a mistake. Jobs. So if you wrote job, you have the same mistake I just made. Okay, so I just made a mistake there. So why is it jobs? Because if you look at the app.js, the jobs path is connected to the jobs route right here. And the jobs route is the one that handles the post request.
So it's like mail.
Yeah.
So that was the wrong
Just send it.
address, so.
Yeah, you can think of it that way. Yeah, just where do you send it to? Now I did make a mistake. It was jobs and not jobs. So make sure you catch that. And then the only thing to keep in mind is that we also have to specify the method. Remember, HTTP method. And forms send posts.
Also, if that's what you were saying earlier, if the post request was in the job form route, then we could put job form there. But it's
Exactly.
not, it's in the,
Right.
Okay.
That's correct. And that would have been like a perfectly valid way of sending the data as well. Like it would have made sense.
Okay.
So now if I go back to the jobs route itself, remember, we're not actually creating a job. We're just sending back a dummy response, line 46. So if I reload and I have my button here now, and I can just type in whatever, technically it doesn't matter because none of this is going in the database, right? So if I press create job, once I press that, this route should take over and then send back that response. So we should see create new job. Okay, that means the data was successfully taken from the form, sent to the server passed it off to the jobs route. The jobs route received the request and generated this answer based on our code. That's a very important cycle of events that you need to make sure you understand. That's the request response cycle, right? But it's just a different request type this time. The only difference is it's a post request instead of a get request. But it's still the standard request response cycle. That part hasn't changed.
Can you go back to the job form mustache?
Yeah, make sure you get that. This is easily the most important part of tonight's workshop, and probably one of the top 5 things we've done so far. So make sure you have that working. I'm going to pause the video. and grab a refreshment.
Yeah, I was like, try to restart.
Okay, so we have the data going to our route, and the route is returning a dummy response, which is good, but now let's make sure we're actually getting the actual data. Okay, so here in the route, the important takeaway here is where do we grab the data? Okay, so don't forget this is coming from a request. That's the form of the form is sending a post request, and whenever you have a post request, the data, the actual fields like the position, the company, the start date, all that's the data. That's called the body. That only happens in a post request and a put request, the P's. So we have to grab the body. And I don't mean that in a dirty sense, but we grab the body, so rec.body. Here, I'm grabbing the form data on line 45. Okay, so all the input fields in that form, just imagine they all get bundled up and they get thrown into that request.body property. That's actually what happens. And normally what I do next is I just spit it right back out. So I say job equals body. I just turn it right back around. That way I can quickly confirm whether or not it worked. Because obviously if we didn't get the data to pass through, what's the point? So, before I run it through, does everyone see what, first of all, does everyone have the code, number one, and number two, does everyone see what I'm doing here? Like, do you see the thought process here?
Yes, because if I'm not mistaken, that allows us to make a request to pull the information from the data from the body,
And then what are we doing with it?
and then we're going to post it.
Well, we're going to, but let's focus on what we're doing now. What are we doing with it now?
We are handling a response once we pull the data.
And then what are we doing with the data?
We're providing a response.
We're just sending it right back in the response. It's like a boomerang. We're just sending it right back. Why would we do that?
To make sure that we're getting the right data.
Just to make sure it worked. Is the data we're seeing consistent with the values we typed in the form? That's all we're doing right now. So I'm going to go back here. And what is it? Job form? So in here, now I actually want to fill these out. Because whatever I type in there, I want to make sure I see on the other side. Right? So let's say teacher, high school, Chicago, 2015, 2016, I taught computers. Okay, so I've created a fake job. When I press create job, again, you want to be sure you know what to expect. So what are we hoping to see?
All the inputs that you provided.
All right, spit right back to us in JSON form. Correct. There it is. Okay, make sure you see that too. So go ahead and do what I just did and confirm that you see the same thing. And I'll pause the video for this.
Could you go back to the
Now we have the data going here and we're just bouncing it right back. So we've confirmed that the data is successfully transferring through. So that's good. But remember, the actual objective was to store the data into the database, right? To actually create a new job, right? Because post stands for create. So we don't actually want to do just that, right? That's not the end goal. The end goal is to actually create a new job with the data we have here, right? And that's one of the CRUD operations. Which letter is it? Which letter of the CRUD are we doing right now?
Create.
Create.
Um,
And create stands for correlate to
Post.
post. So if we're doing a CRUD operation, what piece of code are we going to use from the top here?
You said if we're going to do a post.
Well, what object in these 4 lines is responsible for handling CRUD operations?
The controller.
Controllers. So we take the controllers and we create, or we really grab the job controller. So here on line 47, we're grabbing the job controller. That controller instance right there is responsible for all the CRUD operators, creating a job, reading a job, updating and deleting. That's like sort of the handler of the jobs in our database. Okay? And that controller code, it's not like hidden or anything, it's right here. It's in the controllers folder. Okay? And we have only one controller, it's called job controller. And we have a bunch of methods here. We have get by ID, post, and put. And delete. Which method do you think we're going to use right now? Post. Yeah, line 45. And look at the argument in that body. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab the job controller and we're going to use the post function because we're creating a new job. So post. And the argument, which is what goes in the parentheses, that's called an argument, or sometimes a parameter, is the body. So what should I type there? Body. And that will create a new job with the details we entered in the form. And then don't forget, we have to give it a sequence of steps, like what do you do next? That's in this then block. We take the job. So here where it says then, that's literally what we do next, right? And that's this argument right here, this job argument, is the job we just created. So what happens between here and here is like the most important thing. That's where we insert the job into the database. And then the database responds with that job object. Like that's the result of the transaction. Okay, this is a little hard to grasp right now because it's very like abstract, but here on line 48, we're taking the request body and we're inserting a new job into the database. And that takes a certain amount of time, a couple microseconds or whatever. When it's done, it'll spit back the new job, the created job right here. And then in here is what we call the success block, what we do at the end of the process. Okay? And then don't forget there's 2 blocks. There's a success block and a, in case something goes wrong, error block, catch block. So we want to have a catch block right here in case something goes wrong. This is called error handling. It's very, very important. And in the case of an error handling, an error, I'm going to send back a confirmation of fail. And then usually error objects have a message key. Not always, but usually. So I just respond with a message. Now the important thing here is that we did not handle the success block. We didn't properly write the code for the success scenario, which is really what's more important, right? So now let's think this through a little bit. We're accessing this endpoint from that job form template we wrote, which is like an internal page for us only, kind of, right? Like only we know about it. So assuming it goes through successfully, we should have the data in the database. So we should be able to go back to the home page right away and see the new job we just created like immediately. That should work. It's a little fast. Am I making sense there? So right here with all those question marks, like at that point, the process succeeded. The transaction was successful. We've created the job. That job now resides in our database. So if I go to the home page, I should see that new job right away. You with me? So what I can have it do on line 50 is just have it bounce right back to the home page. And then you should be able to see the new job immediately on your website.
Oh, so pretty much that form page we created, what we're doing now is setting up the controller where once we place the inputs in there, it automatically place it in the home page.
Doesn't place it in the home page. It places it in the database.
In the database.
But the home page queries the database. All of that should work. I'm not guaranteeing it will. I may have made a mistake, but that's what's supposed to happen. So what we can do instead is we can, instead of send a request, we don't want that. We don't want to send JSON. We don't want to do that. We don't want to do either one of those. We want to redirect to the home page. Go back to home page. Because when you go back to the home page, it'll requery the database, which now has new data in it. And it should show the new job we just created. That's what's supposed to happen. Okay? I don't know if it will, because I may have made a mistake, but this is what's supposed to happen. Does everyone understand kind of the thought process here?
Say it again.
So here, or right here, when we take a post form and we send the job data to the endpoint, this code is going to run. The controller will insert the new job into the database. That's what the controllers do. They handle the database operations. That's CRUD operations. When it's done, this code will run. So by the time we get to that code, the new job is now in the database. Otherwise, it wouldn't run. It wouldn't be successful. If the new job is in the database, that's what we call persisted. If it's been persisted, we can go right back to the home page, and that new job will show up in your experience section, or is supposed to show up. Otherwise, it didn't work. So we can bypass that step and just go right back to the home page through what's called a redirect. We don't have to render some wonky JSON or anything. We can just go right back to the home page. That's called a redirect. This is a totally new concept.
So if it's not in there, it'll redirect.
No, if it's not in there, it's going to run the catch.
It's going to run the catch first.
Because something went wrong.
Are you always going to use the redirect when you create a form?
No, I'm just using it in this example to illustrate like why we would use it in this case. There's really nothing that falls under the category of always. But this is like a pretty typical example.
Okay, it's in the home page. If it's not in there and there's nothing there, then it gives you the fail.
Right. Hopefully this won't happen. Because that means something went wrong. I just put it there because it's something you need to get in the habit of doing. But if things go right, which is right here, these 3 lines, then we can go right back to the home page, and the home page queries the database. Don't forget that. And if you just want to confirm that, if you go the index route, Look at what the home page is doing. It's taking the same job controller and running a GET request. That's accessing the same database. So that GET request should now have the new job inside. And then when we see, we should like visually see it. We should see it on the home page. So if I go to the home page,
You should now see.
no, I didn't create a new job. These are the two jobs, right? President and senator, right? Let's say, well, I'm neither one of those, but let's say I got a new job and I want to add it. I got to fill out the details, right? So teacher, high school, Chicago, 2015. Okay, so I have like my new job like filled out here. When I press create job now, it's going to give me a very different response, hopefully. What should the response be? It's going to redirect to the home page. It's going to go back to the home
Should
page,
be an additional job put in there.
but there's going to be a new job in there, hopefully, unless I made a mistake. So let's test it out.
Okay, now I see what you're saying, looking at here,
All
okay.
right, so let me press this. Oh, it didn't work. I made a mistake. Okay, so let's debug this because this is unexpected. So let's see what's going on here. So you are now watching me debug in real time because this is actually unexpected. Like I said, I may have made a mistake. I clearly did make a mistake. So what I'm going to do here is for certain we got the success block because we redirected to the home page. So this is actually worth watching me do because I'm now thinking out loud. So we got the success block because we redirected to the home page. So we definitely got the success block. That means this code is certainly running, okay? So if that code is running, something here has to be showing up. So let's see what's going on there. So I'm going to console log whatever the new job is. So let's see. So I'm going to go back here. Teacher, high school, Chicago. Okay, so let's see what we get here. So it's going to go back to the home page, but it's still going to fail, right? Because I didn't fix anything, right? But here is the new job. You see it?
Okay, yeah.
So that part was successful. We even have a database ID. So something weird is going on here. So what I can do, this database ID means it definitely persisted to the database. So another thing I can do is I can test the endpoint that we wrote just for jobs, right? So what I can do is I can go to localhost and then jobs, right? Look, it's all there, right? It's actually in the database. So this is a front end error. This is a client side error, not a back end error.
Mhm.
So far, are you with me?
Yeah, the database got it, so.
Database got it right. So now I can go back here and figure out what's going on the home page. So I go back here, got that and that, job. So what's going on here? So let's say console log. And then I just see what's going on here. And just so you understand, like, this is what I do like all day. I just track down problems and like this is how I fix it, right? And so here I go back to the home page and now I should see the current jobs that are being queried, right? And do I see the stuff, the new jobs? Well, it's kind of hard to read this, right? So what I would normally do next is copy all that and just go to a JSON formatter like page. These are easy to find. Just do one of these. right? And this is what's currently in the back end, right? So here we have president, teacher. So my new jobs are coming through, right? So now we have another problem. So here's what the problem is. Now I figured it out. I've now solved the problem. Here's the problem. If I go back here to the home mustache file, right? If you find the jobs, it's still hard-coded. We never rendered this dynamically. So in other words, we didn't make a mistake. We're just not done, right? And that was not planned. Like I actually thought this was in there dynamically. So I just quickly sort of carved it up and figured out where the problem was. And now I see what we need to do next, which is render this data dynamically. You guys with me?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do it real quick just so you can see it, but I don't want you to follow it. I just want you to watch it, and then we're gonna actually do it on Monday. Okay? So here we have our two jobs that are hard coded. President and senator, right? So we have those two jobs. 1, 2. You guys see those blocks of code that are identical except for the content, right? So I can just use each one of these, or just one of them, as our de facto template for the job data, right? So I can just do jobs, right? And then I can just get rid of, and I can just close it. And don't forget, these hashtags means we're looping through an array, right? And then the second one right here, just get rid of it because we're looping through the jobs payload in here. See right there. So here we now have what is it? Position, and then we have start, and this all goes back to what we were doing Monday of last week. Company, right, and then location. So now I'm going back to the mustache templating engine and just using it for its purpose, rendering dynamic data, right? So then I go back here, and this is going to be description. So now this is fully rendering the mustache template data rather than anything hard-coded, hopefully. I may have made another mistake I don't know about, but at the very least, we covered that mistake, right? So if I go back here to the home page, I now have teacher, the same job because I was testing it, right? So now this data right here is now rendering from the database rather than hard-coded. Does that make sense? So what I want you to do between now and Monday, because that's the long period, right? We have 4 or 5 days in between, is I want you to set all that up again for projects. Okay?
Question, could you go back to the code? Wasn't it something below that?
Yeah.
Does that just render the database for that one section? You
This
understand?
right here, Rashid?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You see where it says jobs?
Yeah.
That's a direct reference to this key right here, which is an array. This array might have 2 jobs, it might have 200. However many it is, they all show up here. Okay, and this goes back to what we were doing on, I think, Monday.
Yeah, when you had the global.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So it all ties in. That's why I was doing what we did on Monday. Okay? So, I mean, this was obviously crazy fast. I just whipped through it. But for the sake of when you go home, I want you to watch it again and try to do it on your own. And then try to apply the same techniques to the next section, which is going to be projects. Or you might have, well, I don't know, they're all the same. I think projects would be good because there's 3 attributes on project. There's the name, the description, and this one's a little sneaky, but the link, the URL, okay? Because your project might be like a website, or like whatever your project might be. Right, so it's the title, the description, and the URL, okay? And that's essentially the schema of a project. Got it? So try that when you get home between now and Monday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 days. That should be enough time. And see if you can get this hooked up with the project controller, which by the way doesn't exist. Okay, so if you look here,
So it's just like we did it tonight.
it's a little bit more, because if you look at the models, there's only a job model. There is no project model. In other words, you got to create that. And there's no project controller. There's only a job controller. So you got to create the project controller. Okay? And the only thing I'll tell you offhand, because I don't expect you to know, is right here on the index, you have to import it like that. Project controller, and like that, project. This is the only thing I'll just tell you right now, because I don't expect you to figure it out. It's not intuitive. So just make sure you import it and export it. Okay? So give that a good effort between now and Sunday or Monday. It's an important concept. Okay? And I'll send you this code. I'll send you this code as a zip file with that in there commented out. So like I said, that's the only part of this I don't expect you to figure out on your own, because there's nothing intuitive about it. So I'll just leave that there so you understand you need to comment that out. But the rest, work off of what's already there and try to apply the same techniques to the next piece of dynamic data. There's 3 pieces of dynamic data that I want you to do. We already did 1, which is the jobs. We have projects and references, okay? And if you're feeling ambitious, figure out how to delete one of these. Because look, I put the same thing twice because I thought I made a mistake. I did make a mistake, but I didn't realize what the mistake was. So that means I made a mess now, right? So we gotta get rid of that. So see if you can figure that out too. Okay, that would be like a good next step.
Hide or show.
That's right.
Just hide or show.
You could hide data that's corrupt, but it's better just to remove it. And that's really, or delete it, right? So it would be a delete method, okay? All right, that's good for tonight. We got through everything I wanted to. Thanks for bearing with me. And yeah, I'll see you on Monday.
Thank you.
Yep.